Hi, my name's Paul Traynor. I'm the National Coordinator for Passionist Family Groups in Aotearoa, New Zealand. We've just had a meeting with the national team here in Australia, and one of the things we've been looking at is at resources. What sort of things can we do? I know in New Zealand we've had some issues about the low numbers we get at formation, and therefore we need to look at it in a different way. So we thought by having some videos on some formation sessions, it might start a process where we can get some information to the Passionist family groups themselves, where a coordinator could work with and look at this and see what we can do. So it's there for you, for your parish, your region, whatever way you wish to use it. The session I'm going to look at today is belonging. Archbishop Pat Dunn, who's now retired, said that the Christendom model is now in a state of collapse. He said if you wanted to join the church, you needed to behave correctly, then believe what the church teaches, and then you would be baptised and welcomed so that you fully belonged. It occurs, he said to me, that the Passionist family groups appreciated the importance of belonging right from the very beginning. We're going to look at this difference between the era of Christendom, where you believe, behave, belong, which is a bit like Pat's described, and then belonging first. So how should we operate? How do we create belonging, and what sort of things do we need to do in creating belonging in the church? I'm going to look at different areas from Jesus, St. Paul, Christendom, Pope Francis, Passionist family groups. For the Pharisees, understanding holiness equated to separateness. And we're going to see that Jesus redefines holiness. Because for the Pharisee, what you are is separate from sinners. You separate yourself. They don't know the law. They don't understand the law. They make mistakes, and therefore they're unclean. They become the unwashed, so to speak. For Jesus, holiness was integration with sinners. As he says, I want mercy, not sacrifice. He creates a new paradigm. New people need to be integrated. Jesus tells the Pharisees, go and learn this. Be concerned for others with your heart. This is all the way around, the wrong way around. We want and accept someone new to believe first, then come away to behave, and now you're one of us, you belong. And Jesus says, no. First, you learn to belong. Belonging is the place to start. For the community of people where you experience, where you can catch faith, not teaching it, but catching it through the experience of others. People need to be welcomed and experience a sense of belonging. That means acceptance, understanding, listening, showing, practice what we preach. Our actions speak, and therefore we can utter those words that Jesus used. I have come to serve, not to be served. So how did we get from the approach of separateness and away from Jesus? How did we get there? Mark Ashton, a pastor, mentions that Luke the tax collector was an outsider. And yet he becomes an insider because he becomes one of Jesus' disciples. Sharing a meal in his culture was the ultimate sign of belonging. There are over 40 meals involving Jesus recorded in the Gospel. In Mark, he's accused of being a glutton and a drunkard. He obviously enjoyed the meal, but he enjoyed the company. It's a bit like when you go to a party or a meal with people, and if you're holding a glass and others are looking at you and you're laughing and enjoying yourself, all of a sudden people say, oh, I think they've had a bit too much. Those who shared belonging with Jesus included social and religious outcasts. I came to seek the lost. The hallmark of Jesus' ministry is seeking out the lost, and it becomes the reverse of the common church practice. At sunset, in Luke 4:40, the people brought to Jesus all who had various kinds of sickness, and laying his hands on each one, he healed them. If you're a Catholic, come to a communion. This recently I was told, where at a service, the priest gets up and says, oh, look, if you're not a Catholic, stay where you are. The Catholics can come up for a communion. Wow, that's just separateness and foreign to how Jesus would deal with people coming to the table. The blind man outside of Jericho begged for Jesus' mercy. He wanted to see. In Luke, it says, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Despite being asked to be quiet, he continued to call out. Persistence. Jesus stopped and asked for the man. So we need people to bring us to Jesus. They bring him, and he asked the man simply, what do you want me to do for you? And the blind man replied, Lord, I want to see. And Jesus said, receive your sight. Your faith has saved you. Receive your sight. Your faith has healed you. He was not asked to recite the Nicene Creed to prove his faith. Then there's Zacchaeus, a religious outcast. Jesus did not tell him to stop sinning. He said, come down, Zacchaeus. I'm coming to your house. I'm coming to have a meal at your home. So what happens? People go, oh, he's going to eat at a sinner's house. For Jesus, it was fellowship, belonging first. Salvation has come to this house today. The Samaritan woman in John's Gospel, Jesus knew she'd been married 5 times. They had a lengthy discussion despite their cultural and religious differences. She leaves her water jar and went to bring the townspeople to meet Jesus. She's a missionary. So she's the one who goes out and she's going to bring people to Jesus. During many periods of church history, this woman would have been rejected and treated as an outsider, unable to belong. Jesus saw people as family. They belong. Belonging and acceptance allowed people to see faith in a new way. St. Paul, to embrace the gospel, was to enter into community. He set up more small churches, household churches, all around Asia Minor. Belonging was the fundamental starting point. He did not ask the Greeks to become Jews. He argued his position with James, who was the head of the Jerusalem church and the leaders in Jerusalem. Had he failed, Christianity would have been a small sect within Judaism. That's what happens when people don't belong. They get cast aside, you get separated. Jesus is not interested in that, and I don't think God's interested. He wants us to come home, to be with one another. Conversions usually, in Paul's time, included the whole household, which meant there were different levels of commitment, naturally. Belonging was fundamental for Paul. He did not separate the sacred from the secular. The strategy that Paul began with is belonging. So we come to Christendom, from the 4th century to the Reformation and Enlightenment period. There's a closer partnership between Christianity and secular power. Empires and kingdoms promoted and supported Christianity. In 313, Emperor Constantine issued an edict of toleration, and in 337 became the religion of the empire. In 800, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne as emperor, bringing this church and state together. Charlemagne protected the Pope from his enemies and allowed Rome independence from the powerful Eastern Church. He even imposed the death penalty for the refusal of baptism. The extremes that happen. That's an effective way to get people to belong, though we don't support that. But what kind of belonging is it? It's fear. It's fear-driven. That's not warm, open, hospitable. Opposite. The Black Death occurred in the period between 1347 and 1352, and around 25% of Europe's population died. Preachers, priests and artists fueled a strong feeling of guilt, and the concept and drive and fear of hell was completed through this period. Therefore, to counter that, there was a need. So what sort of things can we do to keep us from hell? So penance, pilgrimages, purgatory, relics, indulgences emerged more strongly. Bishops lived as princes and clerics became elite. They were educated, so this added to their power and enabled them to have greater control over the people. Salvation and excommunication were used as threats, not as a free gift. During the Inquisition, torture was used. So to get someone to believe, you torture them. It's just, then indulgences became common. No salvation outside the church. There's that joke that's told of a Protestant goes to heaven and he's there and he talks to St. Peter and says, "What's the brick wall?" And St. Peter said, that's the Catholics are on the other side. They think they're the only ones here. So this was the era of behave, believe, belong. Many adult Catholics have sadly separated themselves because of the church teaching and how it was communicated. Birth control, marriage, divorce, remarriage. Even today, some Catholics are told you can't belong because you haven't behaved. There's a strong underlying sense of judgment, so opposite to what Jesus did. Do you want me to heal you? Of course. Too much church, too little Christ. Father Alain from Africa says, in many African countries, we're producing baptized people, but not Christians. Christian life is not an overcoat that one can leave at the parish door and collect again when leaving. And so often you come to church and those who do come in, and it's almost a reluctance on their behalf because they come, and then as soon as that final song's on, they're made it to the door. They want to get out. Yeah, not saying hello or welcome, and they, by isolating themselves, they also cut themselves off from that opportunity to engage with fellow parishioners. Behaving, believing and belonging have to be integrated. It's not this. As soon as you look at this, it's different. It's distancing. It's not what Jesus was about. When you look at this picture says and tells you 1,000 words, it's closeness, warmth, friendship, fellowship. That's what it's about. Pope Francis wants to reverse the order of Christendom, a change of era, not an era of change. The Church's purpose, he said, is not to bring God to the world, to emphasise God's presence, because God's already here. You only have to walk in the garden. You only have to go and meet a friend. You only have to look at the universe story to realise that God is already here. The Church should be a home for all, not a small chapel focused on doctrine, orthodoxy and a limited agenda on moral teachings. When he was Archbishop, he said, in our ecclesiastical region there are priests who don't baptise children of single mothers because they weren't conceived in the sanctity of marriage. These are today's hypocrites, those who clericalise the Church. Can you imagine? We ostracise and isolate people who make mistakes. We all make them. We have to be compassionate, understanding, and we want to bring in that message of Jesus, the message of forgiveness and showing compassion. Francis asked Catholics, what do I do to make the Church a community in which everyone feels welcome and understood, in which everyone feels the mercy and love of God who renews life? That's what it's about. The Archbishop of Melbourne said, I recognise that institutions generally are on the nose. I think the local community, that is where the energies need to go. Bishops and archbishops in the past were concentrating on big picture things. Maybe it's time to concentrate on the smaller stuff. Mahatma Gandhi, he decided to visit a Christian church in Calcutta. The ushers told him he was not welcome at this particular church. It was for high caste Indians and whites only. He later declared, I'd be a Christian if it were not for the Christians. Some parishes do not offer a warm welcome or a sense of belonging to new parishioners. Some tell you not to talk or say hello to fellow parishioners. This is supposed to be a place where we come to the table, break bread, share wine. No. Sometimes it's the parish priest. Sometimes it's the parishioners who are the reason for this lack of welcome. So, what's it like for those who already feel like outsiders? It might be through their marriage, through their ethnic origins, new to a country. They come to church and no one talks to them. People make judgments about them by the colour of their skin, their eyes, their complexion, whatever it may be. You're not going to get anybody if you don't welcome them. My grandfather said his biggest regret was not attending his son's wedding. He didn't get married in a Catholic church. He said nothing was worth what that caused. Separation from his son, his family. And this is how many parishioners get lost to the church. He was speaking to Brian one day and he asked about our brother John. And he said, I haven't seen John for a long time. Is there a reason? And he said, well, grandfather, he said, John's not married anymore. And he has a new relationship, a new girlfriend. My grandfather said to Brian, you tell John any friend of his is a friend of mine. Welcoming. That's what Jesus would do. Welcome, bring people home. That's how you heal them. People can be helped to belong by a warm and open parish priest. If he's not welcoming, parishioners can be, should be, must be. A structure helps. You can have post-mass cuppers, get to know each other, name tags, home visitors. Somebody's new to a parish, they leave a note, go and visit them, introduce yourself, open themselves to the opportunity of joining a family group. This is the focus of Passioners family groups. We belong first. This tempts our behaviour and leads to our belief. Passioners family groups has the structure and were created with the aim of helping parishioners to get to know one another and to create a sense of belonging. This needs to extend beyond the individual Passioners family group so there are wider connections and more belonging in the parish. It's not for me to keep this to myself. It's like but you don't put a light under a bush, you put on a stand so everyone can see. Passioners family groups have to reach out and welcome others. It's not a private club. Everyone is welcome. This has to be part of our Christian vision. We want to deepen our personal commitment to creating a strong sense of belonging, a strong sense of community in our existing Passioners family groups, in our parishes for which our Passioners family groups live and serve the community. And we also want to go beyond the church attenders. We need to find ways, and this is a real challenge for all of us, is how do we reach those who don't attend? How do we give this message of hope, of hospitality, of openness and warmth to them? How can the Passioners family group movement improve their sense of belonging? For those who already belong, for those who are half-hearted, for those who are new to the parish, those who are younger, and for those who've never joined. How do we improve that? We can and we should be doing something. So let's focus on belonging first. The other things will follow. Thank you.